Thanks for stopping by and seeing what I'm up to. My name is Silkyfeather, and you can call me Silky. Let's get into it. How to unfuck your habitat. You're better than your mess. By Rachel Hoffman. Narrated by Emily Wu Zeller. Chapter 11.
Asking for help or helping someone else. The last thing you want to do when you feel like your house is a total shithole is invite someone into it. If it's bad enough that your place looks like a tornado hit it, why on earth would you want to compound the problem by having someone witness it in all of its horrifying glory? Why would you want to give people the opportunity to judge you and mock you, right? Well, kind of, but not really. Those thoughts are valid, but there's another side to it. One of the weird and cool things about human nature is that we generally despise dealing with our own messes, but lots of us absolutely love getting our hands on someone else's. A mess we create ourselves is usually mortifying and shameful, but someone else's mess is like a brand new episode of a home makeover show, and we want to be the star, not the subject. There's a reason that before and after pictures are so deeply satisfying. It speaks to that part of us that sees a problem and immediately starts thinking about how to fix it. Even better that it's not actually our problem to solve. And then there are the emotional associations. When you look at your mess, your feelings are mostly negative. Disappointment, failure, helplessness, shame. When you come into someone else's space for the express purpose of helping to clean it up, you're a superhero. You're helpful and considerate and acting with that person's best interests in mind. See the difference? Granted, these emotions don't always make a ton of sense, as emotions are so rarely logical, but they're really pretty common. Helping is awesome. Being helped, less awesome, at least in our minds. And that association tends to prevent us from utilizing all of the tools at our disposal. So while we're often embarrassed by the state of our homes, we might be missing out on a valuable resource for helping us get things straightened out. Our friends and family. In healthy relationships, these people want us to be happy, and they understand that our homes might get a little out of hand. Of course, unhealthy relationships can be full of judgment and short on understanding on both sides, so throwing two people who feel that way into a messy space in order to clean it up can be a recipe for disaster. If you feel like someone is going to be shitty about it or use it against you, don't ask them, even if they're the tidiest, most organized person you know. Maybe especially then. Organization without empathy can be a dangerous combination. Just ask that really horrible boss you had that one time. But if you have someone who's looking out for you, they might be your best bet for helping wrangle your mess if you can come around to feeling comfortable asking for their help. Don't misunderstand. There's a lot of trust involved in allowing someone into your space to help you get things under control. You have to trust them to be kind, supportive, and honest. But if you have someone like that in your life, it's a huge asset, and a resource you should be taking advantage of. Someone in your life who's expressed concern or offered help in the past might be just the person to help you out, as long as the concern comes in the form of support, not criticism. You might have people in who would love to help you out but don't know how to broach the subject, or don't want to hurt your feelings. Someone who's that considerate of your feelings is probably a great person to ask. So how do you go about asking? Lots of people know that their friends and family need help with their homes, but they hesitate to overstep their boundaries by offering help. If there's someone in your life you think fits the bill, just start with a casual question. I need to clean up around the house, and I could use an extra set of hands. Is that something you could help me with if I bribe you with pizza? Most people are going to be pretty honest here. An enthusiastic affirmative is a green light. You might be surprised at how happy people are to be asked. So often, they're worried about you and want to help but don't know how. A gentle rejection probably just means they hate cleaning entirely, whether it's their stuff or yours. If you do get a no, try not to take it too personally. There are so many reasons someone might decline, and almost none of them have anything to do with you and everything to do with cleaning in general. Once you've rallied some help with wrangling your mess, here are some tips for making the most of it. Pre-planning. Before your help arrives, Sit down and figure out what you need to do and what you need the person who's helping you to do. Do you need your helper to make decisions about what stays and what goes? Or is that the exact thing you don't want anyone else to do? Do you need a lot of help physically moving stuff around? Someone to tell you where to start and suggest what to do next? There are a million ways this can go, and it'll be most beneficial if you can figure it out beforehand. Once you decide, write down your thoughts. Then sit down with the other person and talk about what you're looking for. Use your notes as a guide for the conversation and take notes about what arises from the discussion. They'll be pretty helpful to look back on if things get a little rocky, or if you need to do a course correction partway through the process. As always, honest and open communication is absolutely key here. Both sides need to be clear about what each needs from the other, and willing to stop and address concerns as they come up. The more you talk about it and establish guidelines and parameters, the smoother it'll go. You might have to get past some initial discomfort, but once you get through that, you'll be able to accomplish so much more. Having a clearly defined plan, as well as talking about some of the tough things that are likely to come up while you're working, will be incredibly useful. This can be awkward to talk about, but if you've gotten to the point where you're willing to have someone in your home to help you clean it up, and that someone has agreed to it, you're both already on board. There's a lot in this process that has the potential to be emotional or difficult. There's so much fear involved. Fear of asking for help, fear of dealing with your mess, fear of judgment, fear of what might be lurking inside that invisible corner. There's no avoiding it. So the best thing you can do is to get it out in the open. If you know that sorting through your closet is going to be hard for you, say so. If you're dreading having to deal with shredding years' worth of old bills, bring that up. Your helper might have ideas, ways to work through it, and if not, at the very least, they'll know you might need some extra care. Make no mistake, the planning is just as important as the actual cleaning and organizing. Going in haphazardly is a pretty surefire way for things to get complicated and messed up when you're in the middle of it. Don't skimp on the planning. It might also have the bonus effect of making you feel calmer and more confident overall about the whole thing. Some important questions for pre-planning. What do you want to accomplish with this big clean? What do you need the most help with? What do you want to leave for another time? What are you going to do with the things you get rid of? What do you not want your helper to do, say? During the process. It might be hard to start. It might even be hard to open the door and let your helper in. The fear of judgment and all of the negative emotions you're carrying about the state of your home are likely to make it very difficult to get going. Just remember that this person is here for you. You've been open and honest with them, and they've been honest right back, and they want to help. Things aren't going to go exactly as planned. It might even get difficult and crappy and frustrating. Everyone involved is going to get mad or upset or overwhelmed. That's all totally okay. You know that it's going to happen going into it, so just be prepared. If you came up with a game plan early on, like I told you to, that's great. You can follow the steps you laid out and move past whatever the problem is. Let's be real, though. You probably didn't do that. You got excited about the project and couldn't wait to get started and maybe didn't plan as well as you could have. It's fine. That's human nature. When you hit a speed bump in the process, take a step back and look at a few things. First, what's the real problem? Is it that you can't decide what to do with that hideous sweater your favorite aunt gave you? Or are you afraid if you get rid of the sweater, it'll somehow be a commentary on your relationship with Auntie Barbara? Once you can figure out what's really bothering you, it might be a little bit easier for you to work through. Next, ask yourself what you want the result of the current problem to be, and, more importantly, what you're afraid it will be. As I mentioned earlier, fear is behind so much of this process. Whether it's fear of a drastic change in your surroundings, or losing the comfort of having all of your possessions out and available for mental inventory, there's definitely some freak-out feelings in there somewhere. Acknowledge it. Name it if you need to, and figure out why it's tripping you up. If your helper is someone who can be emotionally supportive on this level, take advantage of that. Use their support to help you work through it. As you're working, take breaks. Make sure you're fed and hydrated and not overexerting yourself. Check in and see how you're doing emotionally. Let yourself have a good cry if you need one, or a ridiculous dance party to shake off some nervous energy. Have a corny funeral for your discarded possessions. Just maybe not a Viking funeral. We don't need to get fire involved with all this hard work and emotion. Take pictures. Not just befores and afters, although those are pretty important, but also pictures of things you might be reluctant to get rid of. Or just progress pictures so you can look back and see what you accomplished at various stages in the process. Photo documenting the process is a great way to give yourself a little bit of distance from all of the difficult stuff you're working through, and it turns the whole process into more of an anthropological study and less of a self-criticism. Afterward. Follow-up is key for everyone involved. If it's your home that got cleaned up, you need to make an effort to make sure it doesn't get back to that before stage. Use the resources you've acquired and do what you can to keep on top of your home and your mess. Make sure you're doing something, anything, every day that's a positive interaction with your living environment. Clear off your coffee table and put some flowers in a vase. Hang up your clothes and put on your favorite sweater. Wash your dishes and make a mug of gourmet hot cocoa. That'll help keep you from backsliding and also ensure you're feeling pretty good about where you live and how much work you've done to make it awesome. There might be some emotional stuff to deal with after a major overhaul. You'll probably feel a lot of relief and pride once you're all done, but you might also feel some other things you aren't totally prepared for. Perhaps loss for the stuff you got rid of, or a little shame that it took so long to start undoing the mess. It's natural to have these feelings, but don't let yourself wallow in them. Sure, you might feel guilty that you let it get that bad, but you should also feel a pretty significant amount of satisfaction and accomplishment that you did all of the difficult things involved in fixing it. If you're the person who helped, don't just finish the project and forget about it. Your friend is going to need some support for a while. Maybe some reassurance that they did the right thing. Maybe some ongoing help to keep from getting overwhelmed. Or maybe just someone to talk to. A major overhaul of one's living space can be a lot to take in all at once, and the aftermath can be a little tricky. Be there for your friend as much as you can, and lend support however it's needed. With cooperation and communication at every stage in the process, you can make a huge difference in the condition of your, or someone else's, living space. Just remember to stay open and honest, check in frequently, and stay positive, focused, and non-judgmental. What to do if you're the helper? If you have a friend whose home is a mess and you want to help, you need to tread carefully. This goes double if it's a family member. It's very easy to hurt someone's feelings or make them feel self-conscious or embarrassed about this. Once they ask for your help, be positive, be supportive, and keep their feelings in mind. For example, not helpful. Oh, thank God you're finally doing something about that trash heap. Helpful. I'm so glad you felt comfortable asking me. I'd love to help. What can I do? See the difference? The very act of asking for help is fraught with emotion and fear. Don't make it worse. Keep in mind that every word and action from you, especially in the beginning, will set the tone for how this goes. Choose your words and actions carefully and with the knowledge that the person who asked you for help is likely feeling pretty vulnerable and exposed right now. If you're positive and supportive, that fear and vulnerability will start to go away. If you're negative, critical, or judgmental, your friend is soon going to regret asking, and the whole process will be more difficult for everyone. Mostly the asker. If you don't think you can be sensitive, sympathetic, and constructive, it might be better to gently decline the request for help rather than risk irreparably damaging your relationship. If you do say no, do it kindly and without judgment. If you can give a solid, easy-to-understand reason that has nothing to do with the person, do so. It'll go a long way toward avoiding feelings of rejection. If you are willing to be part of the process, being the helper can be tricky. You need to find a good balance between being useful and respecting the rules and limitations of the person you're helping. You might want to completely empty the place out, tossing trash and unneeded possessions indiscriminately. That might be what the space needs, but it probably isn't what your friend needs. They might only be ready to tackle the obvious trash and the dishes. They might not be prepared to sort through and decide the fate of all of their possessions, so don't push it. Just do what they ask you to. Unless you've been given the authority, don't start chucking stuff out left and right. You want your friend to be open to more help in the future, and the best way to do that is to not push for more than they're ready to do. You can certainly offer suggestions, but take no for an answer the first time, and get back on track as quickly and easily as you can. In case you were wondering, yes, it's 100% possible to do more harm than good. For example, by taking liberties with your friend's space or getting rid of things you weren't supposed to. Just because it seems obvious to you that something needs to get chucked doesn't mean it's okay for you to make that decision. Think of yourself as a set of hands controlled by someone else's brain. You're not here to make the decisions. You're here to help the person who made the decisions do the work. If all has gone well in the early stages of this big clean, you'll have had an open and frank discussion of what's going to happen, how it's all going to go down, and what you can and can't do to help. Here are a few more things to keep in mind as the helper. Don't overstep. Do what you've been asked, but don't take initiative that you haven't been given. You might think every single thing in a room needs to be thrown out, but if the person who owns those things doesn't agree, you don't have the right to override them unless they've given you permission beforehand. Be patient. This can be hard, but an impatient or overly critical helper can derail the entire process. Be supportive. Your friend may only be able or willing to do small amounts, and that's fine. Let them know you're there to support them, whatever they decide to do. Be positive. This process is really difficult for the person you're helping, and they can use as much optimism about the whole thing as you can give them. Positively reinforce their decisions, no matter how obvious they might seem, to help remove some of the hesitancy they might be feeling. Don't impose your own standards. You might look around when you're nearly done and think it's still pretty terrible. You can think that, sure, but keep it to yourself. You're not the person whose opinion matters. You need to defer to the person you're helping to get to the level of clean or organized that they're comfortable with. Don't judge. If ever there was a time to keep your negative opinions to yourself, this is it. Keep in mind that your words are pretty powerful here, and you can end up being incredibly hurtful even if you don't mean to. Think carefully about what comes out of your mouth. If you can't keep from making negative or judgmental comments, you might not be actually helping at all. Take no for an answer. Once again, remember that you're not steering this ship. If you think you know the best way to handle something, but the person you're helping doesn't agree, it's not your place to try to override their decision. Accept no gracefully, and with the understanding that it's not about you at all. 4.
And that's where we're going to leave our book today. Thanks for stopping by and seeing what I was up to. My name is Silkyfeather, and you can call me Silky. Here at Silkyfeather's Nest, hit that like and subscribe. We're enjoying our audio book club. Loving it. Bye. Be kind to one another. Life is too short.